Shelford, Chairperson of Westminster North Conservatives, and today is Census Day. It's literally the most exciting day of the calendar. But actually, very seriously, it is very important to Westminster. And to talk to you about it and why it's so important, we've got Tim Mitchell, Deputy Leader of Westminster City Council. Hi, Tim.
Hello, Henry.
Well, great. Look, thank you. Look, the first English census was in 1086, the Doomsday Book. Haven't we done enough?
No, we haven't. Modern censuses go back to 1801, and we conducted them 10 years since then, apart from 1941, when we're in the midst of the Second World War. And what's this? It's given the opportunity for the public sector and the voluntary sector, all parts of society, to understand our population. It's really important that we have an accurate census so that from a council point of view, we can provide the services that our community needs. We need to understand the community, and that's what the census gives us.
And there are two big aspects, aren't there? There's one, total number of residents, because that's how Westminster City Council decided how much money it's going to get from central government. And I think people are under a sort of misunderstanding that Westminster is rich as avarice and doesn't need this money. And then the second part is what that population is to then focus and decide the resources. Have I understood that correctly?
Yes, that's correct. So you mentioned business rates. We collect business rates on behalf of the government, and then we give it to them, bar about 4%. And the only reason why we get any of that money back is because of the information which comes from the census, because a large amount of government funding for the NHS, local councils, other public sector organisations comes on the basis of the population, the characteristics of that population, the age of the population, the ethnic group of the population, the types of occupations the population's involved with, all are reflected in the funding that various public bodies receive.
Yeah, it's critical for how many schools we have, how many GP surgeries, and as well as that fundamental amount of resources.
Absolutely. And it's a particular challenge for us in inner city London, as it is for other inner city areas, because unlike a small rural village or perhaps the suburbs of London where the population is pretty stable, doesn't change very much from year to year, the population in inner city areas is changing very fast. In some areas in Westminster, there can be a third of the population change in the course of 12 months with a considerable turnover. And that means that many of the people who receive the census forms, as people did in the past, and now most people are receiving a code to complete the form online, they don't really have a stake in the community in the way that I am and many long-term residents of Westminster do. So they don't see what's in it for them. But there is something in for them as much as me and the longer-term residents, in that the services that they depend on, which is provided by the public sector, be it police, fire, ambulance services, all fundamentally are driven by the census information which we'll be receiving today.
And it's such an important point. Westminster, we are such a special area, and we have so much migration within London, within the UK, so nationally and internationally. And we have people who are here for, weeks, months, years, decades, and particularly those who are here for a lesser amount of time who might not realise the importance of this. We do need them to fill it in. It's very important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In moments of crisis, we all dependent on we're all dependent on the fire service, the police service, the ambulance service, other public services. And if people don't complete the form today, that the risk is there are not sufficient ambulances or fire engines to service the needs of the wider community, but also you yourself. Only the other day, a week ago, a friend's parents' house burnt down, and they needed the fire engine.
Burnt down. It's like, what?
Luckily not, no, but tragically, this elderly couple, their house burnt down, and because they lived in the countryside, the delay in journey time meant that they were able to get out safely, but that's as far. But the house wasn't saved.
Gosh. Okay. Well, fortunately, I live very near to a fine Westminster fire station.
Indeed, Soho fire station's just around the corner from you.
Yeah, so hopefully, should I ever have that issue, I should be all right. Let's talk about some of the nuts and bolts of this, though. So, particularly Westminster, we are a fantastically diverse area. With that means sometimes English isn't the first language. So do you want to talk to how many languages the census is available in?
Yes, the census is going to be available in 49 different languages. People can go to the census website, census.gov.uk, and access information in all those languages. Here in Westminster, we've been targeting 10 ethnic groups ranging from Arabic-speaking communities, which of course quite diverse themselves within that, but also Chinese groups.
Especially with Chinatown.
A whole range, including South. Indeed, yeah. Chinatown's on your doorstep, Henry. And then, of course, there are South Asian people of Bangladeshi. Indeed, yeah. But also elsewhere in Westminster, there is a large Bangladeshi population. So what we've done is we in Westminster have produced material to communicate to all these groups to make the point that it's really important for them, their community and the wider community, that the information is completed. There is, of course, something new about Census this time round, in that it's no longer a very bulky, long form. It is available in paper form, but across the country, 90% of the people completing the census will be doing so online, which for some will make it a lot easier. For others, there will be a challenge. And so what we have been doing is working for the Office of National Statistics to identify those people who would potentially prefer paper form, which you can request yourself, or perhaps would need help to complete the form online. So if you go into one of Westminster's libraries, they will be able to help you complete your form online.
That's an important service. So if you are having issues with it, you can go to the library. Do you need to book in? It's obviously COVID times, so restricted numbers. Do you know how people go about that?
No, you don't. But perhaps you'll be able to come back later. Fortunately, though today is census, everybody has between now and the 4th of May to complete their forms.
And may the 4th be with you. And
indeed.
And are you a Jedi? Is that what's on your form?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because one of the questions being asked today is about people's religious affiliation. And some people don't have any religion and were not happy with it last time round. So in Westminster, in 2011, 540 people self-identified as Jedi, which was perhaps not just indicating that they were the fan of the Star Wars movie franchise, but actually were not happy of being having to identify what their religion was.
And actually, I see the Jedi's are on the wane. So 2001, it's 390,000 Jedi's in the UK, and it's now 176,000 Jedi's. So, well, let's see if Disney have turned that around for them. But it does actually raise a really important point on there's two aspects here. One, talking to the privacy of the data, and two, if you want to answer separately from your household, and that particularly for maybe people who are still living with their parents or and have different answers, and they might particularly have different answers on religion, and they might on sexuality, and they might want to have their answer differently. So do you want to talk to first the privacy aspect of the information that's given over, and then second, what people can do if they want to make sure that their record is what they want it to be, and is not done by that person in their household, but done by them?
Yes, first of all, on the privacy issue, all the information which is shared with public bodies is anonymized. It doesn't identify individual households at all. In Westminster's case, across the country, there are populations are broken down into what's called super output areas, where there are a fixed number of few hundred households, and the characteristics of those super output areas are available for people to see, but not the individual or the individual households. That information is kept confidential for 100 years. So those are people who've been looking at their family history will realize that you can actually find census information going back into the 19th century, but only up to currently 1911, and shortly the 1921 information will be published. That the information and the answers that you give are not revealed for 100 years. The other aspect is, as you rightly highlighted, particularly in Westminster, where not only do we have potentially large families, but also we have people living together whilst in a family relationship at all. They happen to be friends, or maybe they're not even friends. Maybe they're living in what are called houses of multiple occupation, where there are bedsits. And so rather than passing on the information, the more sensitive information about one's sexuality or one's religion, you don't have to pass that on to the person completing the census on behalf of the household. Instead, you can request a code from the census.uk website, and you can receive your own form for you to complete, and so you can help identify, put the relevant information down. And that's really important that you do that. We can assure you that that information is anonymous, but it's really important for us, as I said earlier, when we're planning the services for people in our community, to know information about people's sexual orientation, for example, to make sure that there's the appropriate health services available, or people's gender identity, because that is really important that we understand that we can provide the appropriate services for people who identify with non-binary gender.
And I think what that also is talking to, though, is that the census feeds the national picture. So national legislation and questions are informed by this data. And so answering these kind of questions are very important in informing what, say, for instance, legislative focus, and allowing people to for instance, pressure groups and other groups to say, like, look, this is important. There are a lot of people affected by this issue. We need to focus on it, and being able to say that there are more people affected by this issue increases the gravitas by necessity just because of that. You can then talk to that.
Absolutely. The council and the government have got to take people more seriously, the more who identify with those particular characteristics. And you can't then have if other groups were to lobby for resources, then we've got the statistical information actually to say, yes, we hear what you're saying about the need for your group, but actually, if you look back at the last census, you'll see that there are more people who actually have a greater level of need, and we need to concentrate our resources on that group first of all.
These are the difficult decisions of government. Now, in the words of Blue Peter, here's one I prepared earlier. So, if you are in that situation where you want to get your individual code, you go to just Google Census 2021, go to the census site. As you go through to request a new household code, you've also got an option. You can see in the middle there, request individual access code. You click that, it takes you through to here, and you can see very clearly says no one in your household will be told that you've requested an individual access code. So they won't, not only will they not know your data, they will not know you've even done this. And you can then get your code. Now there are two ways for that to happen. Either you can get it to your mobile phone, or they can post it to you. Obviously, if you do it by your mobile phone, that's going to be much quicker. We also wanted to talk to, so Tim, say for instance, you've lost your letter and potentially say, I don't know, blaming your wife for it because we don't have our letter, and it's just not her fault. But we, as a household, do not have our letter. It's a genuine thing. How do we go about solving that, Tim?
Well, the easiest way is to go on to census.gov.uk, and you can put in your address information, and you can then get the relevant link. You can request, as you rightly said, to get a new code sent to you by mobile phone, or indeed posted to you. I would encourage people, if they got a mobile phone, to actually get their code by mobile phone, because, as you rightly said, it's far quicker. It's not dependent on the post.
I have challenges. I did it before this because I felt like I probably should. And so back to Blue Peter style, here it is. So you go census here, start census, and there's a lovely little button that says, I don't have your code. If you click that, it puts you through, goes requesting you, and you can press continue, put in your address, and then either your mobile phone number if you're happy to have it have a mobile, or by post if you don't. Having just done it, it literally took us like a second for that code to arrive. So very, very, very easy. I thought something that some people might be thinking about is that Scotland have obviously delayed theirs for a year. Do you want to just talk to what you think about that? Because I think it also reiterates why this day is so important.
Well, obviously the people in Edinburgh thought differently, but my reaction was that we have collected the information once every decade, and statisticians would probably tell you that it's a lot easier if the information is denominated in 10-year chunks, and so therefore, though I can understand at one level the practicalities of conducting a census at the moment, but we're having elections here in London. They're having elections for the Holyrood Parliament in Edinburgh. If we can have elections, I think there's no reason why we can't have a census at the same time. And particularly because this year's census is going to be the first one, which is going to be predominantly online. it's been made a lot more straightforward for people to complete their census and less of a challenge. You don't even have to go out of your home to the post box to post back your census form. It's all can be done at the click of a button.
Yeah. And I think the other point on that is this data is very, very important. The pandemic is here, and either way, do it now or do it in a year, this data will suffer from having have to have some adjustments placed on it. And if you do it in a year, then you've got to adjust for a year and any impacts. And if you do it now, you have to think about the pandemic, and obviously Westminster. There's potential for a lot of change, particularly for our population, and we know anecdotally and from statistics a number of people moved out of central London, and whilst at the moment there's little to go on, those flats remain there and we fully expect people to move back into them if they've not already. So either way there's a big challenge. But I think the fact that it's every 10 years is very important, to Tim's point, that it is done online. Tim, as we wrap up, do you want to just do a final wrap up why this is so important to Westminster residents?
Well, the census is a once in a decade opportunity for you to join with your neighbours to communicate to the council and the government and all public sector organisations the information about you and your family, so that for the decade to come we can organise the public services that you need to live your lives. It's really important that you do complete the form today. If you have any challenges in doing so, then please make contact with the Office of National Statistics, and you can get a paper form. You can also, as we've heard, go and get your census number to complete the form online. You've got between now and the 4th of May, but don't delay. Today is official census day. Complete the form today, and then you can get on with your lives. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Look, you've been wonderful. And thank you so much for giving your time talking to people about the census and the importance in Westminster. Tim is, if you're in St James's Ward, he is your councillor. He's a Westminster councillor, but obviously anyone who does have questions and they're not solved here, and actually have more general issues with the local environment, do get in touch with the local councillors. They are there to help, and they want to help. And I've personally, on occasion, had issue, and Tim's been wonderful, so I can attest to that personally. That's it. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Tim, so much for doing this. I think it is obviously very, very important. It's particularly important for Westminster. Westminster population means that historically is always under census, as it were, and that means it's always a bigger fight for resources, and so it's and therefore the big risk of being under-resourced for the population. So do fill it in. Thank you very much. That's it. Thank you very much, Tim.
Thank you, Henry.
Thank you very much, and see you soon. And hopefully everyone keep following us on social media, and we're going to be doing hopefully plenty more videos ongoing. Okay, bye everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you.